Where does this masterpiece fall? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
All right, that leads us finally the most important question of this entire episode. Start with Vince, arbitrarily forever.
All right, unlike this film, I'll keep this short. So for movie, give it 7 out of 10. I did not think I was going to like this movie being older and having seen it or now seen it as an adult. But I did like the weirdness and the ebbs and flows. And like you said, it's a simple story that it tells, but I thought it was done pretty well. And it was entertaining. It was funnier than I remember it. I don't remember it being this funny as a kid, but obviously I was a kid. I probably had no fucking clue what was going on.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated the comedy and just kind of like the dark humor. Yeah, so I'll give it a 7/10. For Cage, same, give him a 7. I thought he did a good job. I thought he did a pretty good job at the film. I loved like the weird Elvis impersonation he was trying to do. I thought his Cage mannerisms when they came out fit at times. The third, like we talked about the third act, so I won't go too much, didn't really seem to fit. But then when you think about taking him out of that character that he is with Lula and wearing that snakeskin jacket, it does fit more. So like talking about it added that, gave me more appreciation of his weirdness in those scenes. But I really feel like him and Laura Dern had great chemistry. And I think that's what really kind of solidified his performance for me is when they were together and the way that they were told to act, it really just fit really well. And I really appreciated the performance from both of them. So 7 for movie, 7 for Cage.
Yeah, they sort of talked about that of like her being Marilyn Monroe and him being Nicolas or being Elvis Presley the whole time. But yeah, that leads us over to you, Nigel. Where does Wild at Heart from 1990 rate on your Cageometer?
Yeah, this was the only David Lynch movie I've seen aside from Dune, which it's a David Lynch movie, obviously, but kind of feels like its own thing.
Yeah, it does.
This was like written and directed, I guess adapted and directed. But I didn't like the movie at first. I kind of felt like, all right, it's David Lynch. I do weird stuff to make people feel weird, and I have my actors overact on purpose to make people feel weird and stuff. But I turned around as the movie went along, and I kind of it fits really well. With once I kind of got it, kind of gave up those preconceived notions of what a movie should be and what I'm getting into by watching it. It kind of definitely feels like this movie coalesces around that style and works when you realize it's kind of like a modern fantasy telling of Wizard of Oz, set in a world that's got realistic shit in it. But it's like that surrealism adds to the realism that I mentioned before in certain places. And I really like that. Like, you don't get this kind of movie from everybody. Like, who else would make this kind of a film? And for that, I really appreciate David Lynch for it. He's not for everybody. It's definitely a kind of an acquired taste. I had to acquire it as I was watching it, but I'll give the movie a 7 as well. For that, I feel it's a little long-winded. It's a little, like we mentioned, it's a simple story, but it's kind of told in a bit of a confusing manner that maybe makes it seem more complicated than it is. And certain things were confusing timeline-wise. I don't, like we said, it's edited out of order, and that just may be the general David Lynch style of making you uneasy at every single moment that you're in a film. Like, you start to feel grounded with something, and there's something that throws you off, Yeah. But I think that's very intentional, and it's a style, and you either love it or hate it. And I appreciated it for this. So yeah, 7 for me. Cage, I'll go 7 as well. For his performance, I liked it. I'll basically echo everything Vince said. He kind of took all the words out of my mouth. He was enjoyable to watch. His chemistry with Laura Dern was fantastic. I think she is a much better standout in this movie than him, actually. The way that she plays Lula as that kind of dumb, naive, childlike woman, but also has had a really horrible life and a really horrible past. And the way that she performs it, you kind of get that. You definitely believe that about this character, and their chemistry is great. Their relationship really grounds the film. even through all the more fantastical stuff, it feels like a realistic relationship, despite all the horrible things going on and how screwed up their lives actually are. At first it feels like all the sex is gratuitous, and it might be in a certain respect, but like Laura Dern said, she kind of felt like it was important to the character and for the film, and added things to it. It wasn't just there for the sake of being nude for it. So
though there are a lot of those that seem
there
to be
are other
happening.
gratuitous scenes for sure. Yeah. That maybe she probably wasn't experiencing because she wasn't there when they filmed them. But for the character herself, it's not necessarily gratuitous. I think it's also kind of to show how vulnerable she is. We see her nude all the time, and it's kind of like, we kind of, I don't know if you feel this protectiveness over her. And the shitty life that she has to lead. So that finally gets to that scene with Bobby Peru. It's really uncomfortable and really shocking. So
we've seen all of the moments of her being nude up to that point being these loving moments with Sailor, and now it's like really feels like we're being raped while we're watching the scene.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I don't think you get that from a lot of filmmakers. I don't think a lot of filmmakers would be able to deliver on that or want to, and without self-censoring or trying to not make the audience that uncomfortable in it. And there's kind of that realism kind of grounds it. So again, I don't know why I'm talking about Laura Dern's performance, but I think mainly it's just I appreciated it more than Nick Cage. But Cage's performance was good. I didn't find the Elvis impression to be too distracting. It fits with the overall rest of the fantastic elements of it. And like we mentioned in the third act, he kind of drops it as things get more realistic anyway. So and that also fits in the style of what's going on and what he was commanded to do. So another solid performance from him from fairly early on in his career. So if he was still kind of that, I don't know if he hadn't hit that action star niche yet. He was kind of more in that romantic leading man kind of style, but definitely a bit of a departure from some of the other things we'd seen him at up to this point.
Isn't a lot of like these weird indie films at that time. That was kind of his thing, was like he's that weird guy from that vampire movie. He's that weird guy from that Coen Brothers movie. He's that weird guy from Moonstruck.
So he kind of plays that hunk with a heart of gold, but a rocky past for a lot of these movies, aside from Vampire's Kiss.
He also
pretty much irredeemable in Vampire's Kiss.
Trying to think, like, I feel like he didn't have the Elvis impression when he sees Lula after he gets out of prison. Like, he doesn't really go back into that until he starts singing Love Me Tender.
Yeah, he didn't.
Though he does say, "Oh yeah, amigo."
Yeah.
He has that kind of moment there for a second. So yeah, maybe, I don't know.
So I think one of the things I've heard is that a director's job is to get the best performance that they can out of the actors. One of the director's jobs, obviously. And I think that David Lynch did a good job with using Nicolas Cage's strengths to get this character before us in the way that he's presented and getting us to buy into it. And
yeah, we've seen when directors can't touch Nicolas Cage.
They can't rein him in.
Quite get the performance out of him that they're looking for. And a lot of times I feel like Cage in general, sometimes he can be a little difficult like that because he has very distinct feelings of how he wants the performance to go, but it's a director's job to hone him in and get the performance that he has on paper out of that actor. Well,
I wonder if there was some give and take with this, where Cage had some ideas of how to play it, and Lynch went along with it and let him do it, and that's sort of why they worked well together.
I think that's one of the strengths of David Lynch in general, is he is never going to turn down an interesting idea. So I'm sure there were lots from Cage. So I'm sure he brought a lot to this character in the process. I'll jump into mine. My Cageometer. This movie, I feel like, really benefits from repeat viewings. I think it's a movie that just gets better as you watch it. You know, it's like a good song, like that you might not have gotten the first time.
I get that.
As you start to get it, it just gets more and more enjoyable. So I give the movie an 8 out of 10, which originally, like, I had seen it a long time ago. And when I started, and I rewatched it for this show, I was like, it's maybe like a 6. But the more I watched it and the more I like dove into all the little nooks and crannies of the film, and then when I did the breakdown especially, started noticing like how fucking unique and interesting every single moment put to film is in this movie. And like I said, the story is simple. It's a very simple story of like a mom doesn't want her daughter dating the guy who drove for a hitman, you know, that might know more than he should know about her killing
that old
somebody.
Story.
Yeah, it's a very simple story. But it's told in such a fantastical, weird way, which David Lynch does so well. I've seen quite a few David Lynch movies, and you never know what to expect. And, you know, say what you will about him as an auteur and just a weirdo filmmaker, but like the guy makes every moment memorable. Some of the weirdest shit I've ever seen in my life has come from David Lynch movies.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think that is 100% his strength is like I said, like there's just a character on screen for a second and he somehow makes it memorable. Like the guy snapping in the gas station, the guy making chipmunk noises at the freaking band, like the guy with the crutches with the British accent, like every single one of those things is just like, you didn't have to do that. You could have just had a normal guy. You didn't even have to have that scene with the guy quacking at the right. Like it's so unnecessary, but it just adds like this level of weirdness that draws you into this story and these characters and the shit happening all around them. And like you said, it kind of grounds their love story of like, here's these two pretty normal but unique individuals making their way through the world. And they're just surrounded by this surreal, bizarre fantasy world. So I loved it. I loved it, especially the second time around after not seeing it for a long time. I think it's kind of a little masterpiece. I give Cage a 7 as well. So 7s across the board. I'll kind of echo the same things like him and Laura Dern, amazing. Feel like he's very memorable in this, but also kind of disappears a little bit. It's not cagey. It has a couple cagey moments here and there, but I'm sure those were like David Lynch was all over. Like, let's just make this more and more uncomfortable in this scene, and that's kind of his thing. I think this movie could be cringy to a lot of people.
Yeah, I can see that.
I love that cringe for whatever reason. I've always been really into that. But Cage grounds you. Laura Dern, like Nigel said, like, you know, she's kind of the breakout star in this. And it's, you know, no surprise that Laura Dern went on to have amazing success, especially, you know, in the early 90s. Like right after this, it was like 3 years from now was Jurassic Park. And I feel like that's where most people know her from. But David Lynch definitely saw how brilliant she could be. And it's kind of crazy to come from, you know, that generational talent from Diane Ladd and Bruce Dern, and for her to sometimes somewhat overtake them as far as her career has gone. And she's still doing it.
Yeah, she's still crushing it today.
Not necessarily in Jurassic World 17 or whatever.
That's paycheck.
Shit, but yeah, got to make that money. Anyways, yeah, Cage is great. He's just kind of the straight man, really, in this whole thing, which is kind of funny.
Weird.
Like,
yeah, it's weird.
But Cage I think that's being the straight man.
That's what I liked about his performances. He's a little more of the straight man. He wasn't the fantastical person for once.
Yeah, which is crazy because he's wearing a snakeskin jacket and doing an Elvis impression, but he's somehow the straight man throughout the whole movie.
I love it.